As the night faded, the morning light gradually enveloped the entire Shallow Bay apartments.
Wake up, Emily. Don't think you can get away with this.
Please, James. I didn't.
You went to great lengths to climb into my bed, Emily. Don't use the same tricks you use on other men on me. I won't fall for it.
I didn't. James, believe me, I didn't hit my sister. I don't have any other men. That time was really my first time. My blood was real.
James's anger was instantly ignited. He grabbed her hair tighter, as if he wanted to tear her scalp off.
How many times have you said such nonsense? Are you trying to say you didn't set me up and that a year ago, it was someone else who framed you?
Emily fell silent, not daring to cry. A year ago, she was diagnosed with brain cancer. At that time, she was very scared, not just of death, but more so of never seeing James again. She had loved him for 7 years. She didn't want to regret anything or leave this world with regrets. So, on the eve of James and Sophia's engagement, she did the craziest thing of her life.
Why aren't you talking?
It hurts, James, don't do this. It really hurts.
Hurts? Did you think about how much more it would hurt when you had someone hit Sophia? She's still lying in the hospital.
It really wasn't me.
The pain had already begun to consume her sanity, and the messy sheets were stained with crimson. When Emily woke up, she found herself lying in a hospital bed, with no surprise, her childhood friend Michael by her side. In just 1 year, similar scenes had occurred more than 20 times. She could even guess what Michael was going to say next.
Why don't you tell him? Why can't you just let yourself go?
Michael, dressed in a white coat, sat quietly by her bed.
Where is he?
Even if you don't consider yourself, think about the child you are carrying. If this continues, you might not live to see the day he is born.
What did you say?
You are pregnant.
In the early hours, Emily sat on the sofa in the living room, recalling Michael's words. Terms like threatened miscarriage and hereditary brain tumor were like invisible ropes, tightly binding her. All along, as long as she could stay by James's side, she wasn't afraid of anything. But this time, she panicked. Helplessness and despair spread wildly. Outside, she heard the sound of a car engine stopping, and soon, the door opened. James, dressed in black and white, reeking of alcohol, entered. Emily went up to him and took his coat.
You're back. I've been waiting for you.
Waiting for me for what?
He grabbed her chin with disgust, his face dark.
James.
Shut up. Don't call my name, it's disgusting.
With that, he tore her nightgown without hesitation.
James! Let go of me!
Seeing the woman beneath him clawing at his arms like a madwoman, he was momentarily dazed.
I'm pregnant.
Emily bit her lip, her voice trembling. James, I'm pregnant. Emily thought he would be moved, but instead, she was met with his thunderous rage.
Emily, you're scheming against me again.
If she hadn't played tricks behind his back, she wouldn't be pregnant.
I didn't do it. Emily's voice was filled with desperation. James, it's not true.
She understood what James meant, but she really hadn't done anything.
2 months ago, you got drunk and mistook me for Sophia. We didn't take any precautions, and I fell ill. After a night, my temperature soared to nearly 104 degrees, and I was unconscious for 3 days.
If it wasn't you, then it means the child you're carrying isn't mine.
It's yours, James. It can only be yours. I've been at home every day this year. All the servants can testify. You have to believe me, James.
Her body was soft, and James didn't dislike that. What he despised was her deceit and pretense.
Do I need to remind you? Besides home, there's another place you frequent.
Where?
The hospital.
What do you mean?
You're not stupid. You know exactly what I mean.
Indeed, besides home, she spent most of her time in the hospital. But every time she ended up there, it was because he had tormented her to the point of unconsciousness.
Whether you believe it or not, this is your child.
Fine, if it's mine, come with me to the hospital first thing tomorrow morning.
Why?
To terminate it. I, James, will not raise the child of an enemy.
You're joking, right? Emily grabbed his sleeve, tears streaming down her face.
I don't have time to joke with you.
James shook off her hand and turned to go upstairs.
James, we've been married for a year. What do you take me for?
James's steps suddenly halted. A cruel smile appeared on his lips as he turned back to her, grabbing her wrist and throwing her onto the sofa.
Shut up.
Under the orange light, she was disheveled and barely clothed, while he stood tall and immaculate. He turned and went upstairs, and as she heard the door slam shut, Emily burst into tears. This was her husband of 1 year, the man she had loved for 8 years. After crying for a while, she laughed coldly. The next morning, she was forcibly taken to the hospital by 2 bodyguards. James cancelled all his business appointments and accompanied her to the operating room for the first time. Emily knew very well that he wasn't worried about her, he just wanted to ensure the doctor removed the baby. His cautious nature wouldn't allow him to make the same mistake twice.
James, please don't make me terminate the pregnancy. I beg you, the baby is really yours, I swear on my life.
Your life is cheaper than your promises.
He glanced at his watch and told Dr. Smith, "Hurry up, I only have 15 minutes.
It won't take that long, 5 minutes will do.
5 minutes. She had waited so long for this baby and endured so much, and it could be destroyed in just 5 minutes.
No, she wouldn't allow it. Where's Michael? I want to see Michael.
Dr. Michael is performing a brain surgery and doesn't have time to see you.
Hearing her call for Michael, James's indifferent eyes turned angry. This woman's true colors were finally showing.
Emily, you're despicable.
Just then, his phone rang. It was a call from the ICU.
Mr. James, Miss Sophia has woken up.
James was stunned for a full 3 seconds before hanging up. Before turning to leave, he coldly instructed.
Handle this properly. If anything goes wrong, I'll have this hospital shut down.
Yes, yes!
After James left, Emily rolled off the operating table and knelt in front of Dr. Smith.
Doctor, I beg you, please save my baby. I'll do anything you ask.
You heard what Mr. James said. Even if I had 10 times the courage, I wouldn't dare defy him.
Offending Dr. Michael might get him fired, but offending James would mean never working in the medical field again.
This is a baby, a life. As a doctor, how can you be so heartless?
Emily tried every tactic, pleading and causing a scene. She was willing to give up everything, as long as she could save her baby.
Don't worry, as long as you help me keep the baby, I'll leave immediately and won't let James know.
ICU ward. Sophia saw James rush in and gestured for Dr. Smith to stop removing her oxygen mask.
Weak, you go out first.
Dr. Smith obeyed and left the room. James quickly walked to Sophia's bedside, holding her hand, his emotions rarely showing.
Relieved, Sophia, you're finally awake.
Sad, I thought I would never see you again, James. I missed you so much.
Tears glistened as they slid down her cheeks. Seeing Sophia like this made James's heart ache. He gently stroked her hair.
Gentle, it's good that you're awake.
Only in front of Sophia did James show his gentle side. But for some reason, Sophia felt he had changed. The way he looked at her didn't seem as pure as before.
Hopeful, where's Emily?
Serious, why ask about her?
Hopeful, now that I'm awake, don't blame her anymore. She's still young and can be a bit impulsive.
Angry, disregarding someone's life as being impulsive? Your family is really tolerant of her.
Mentioning Emily always easily ignited James's anger. He glanced at the time. It had been a while, and thinking about what she had done, he still felt uneasy.
Serious, I have something to do. You rest for now. I'll come back to see you later.
Watching James leave, Sophia tore off the oxygen mask. Her intuition told her that whatever James was going to do had something to do with Emily.
Angry, Emily, a year ago, I shouldn't have shown you any mercy.
Her steps were not fast, nor was her strength great. James could subdue her with one hand.
I'm going to end you. I want you to stay with me forever. Sophia will never take you away from me, never.
She gripped the scissors tightly, but how could a little rabbit fight against a big bad wolf? In the next second, her wrist was twisted back by him, and with a crack, the scissors in her hand made a long cut from her ear to her neck.
You're insane.
James pushed her towards the stunned Dr. Smith, coldly ordering.
Send her directly to the psychiatric hospital. No one is to let her out until she's cured.
James, you'll never have peace.
Tears mixed with blood spread across her pale skin like a bewitching mandrake flower. Dr. Smith dragged her out of the operating room, her wails filling the entire corridor. The next day, Michael learned of the news and rushed to the psychiatric hospital where Emily was.
I know everything that happened yesterday.
Michael looked at the woman lying on the windowsill, her eyes empty as she stared outside, as quiet as an abandoned doll. Emily blinked but did not respond.
Including you getting Dr. Brown to cooperate with your act.
The sunlight was a bit harsh, so Emily simply closed her eyes and lazily fell asleep.
Why do you insist on keeping this child? He's treated you so badly. And you know very well that your current health condition is not suitable for childbirth. His birth could accelerate the end of your life.
What he didn't tell her was that if the cancer cells in her brain spread, not only she but also the child in her womb would be in grave danger.
Michael.
She reopened her eyes, turning to look at him.
If I insist on giving birth to him, he might die too, right?
Michael was stunned, then nodded after a moment.
But if I give up on him, he won't even have a chance to see this world, right?
Her voice was gentle, and she even had a smile on her lips, looking quite well.
Emily.
Don't worry, I will live well for him.
She smiled, shifting her gaze back to the window. Michael looked at her stubborn profile, a ripple of emotion stirring in his heart. He reached out, almost touching her hair, but hesitated. After a while, he withdrew his hand and put it back in his pocket.
All right.
3 months later, in the CEO's office of Jiang Group.
Is that guy Michael still visiting her every day?
James asked, holding a pen and signing his name forcefully on a document.
Yes, no matter how late he works, Dr. Michael always goes to the psychiatric hospital. Even if he doesn't go in, his car will stay at the hospital entrance for half an hour.
The pen snapped with a loud crack, and James clenched his fist.
Humph. He really does love her. By any means necessary, from today onwards, don't let that Michael guy set foot in there again. Even if I don't want her, no one else can have her.
Letting those two adulterers be together? Impossible. When Emily begged him not to take away her child, he had actually felt a moment of pity. Now, thinking back, he was damn glad he hadn't softened.
Yes.
Assistant Johnson retreated, and as he left the office, he ran into Sophia.
You idiot! How many times have I told you to call me Mrs. Liu?
Sophia slapped Assistant Johnson. This scene made James's eyes narrow slightly, his gaze cold.
James, I've prepared the guest list for the wedding. Take a look.
Sophia placed the document on the desk and sat on James's lap, wrapping her arms around his neck. She noticed the broken pen and her smile faltered slightly. She had heard the entire conversation earlier.
Thank you.
James wrapped his arm around her waist and glanced at the list. His eyes darkened when he saw Emily's name.
Why invite Emily?
She's my sister, of course, I have to invite her. She's my only bridesmaid.
Are you crazy? Inviting someone with mental issues to be your bridesmaid?
You're still mad at her. She did make a mistake before, but she's already been punished. Let's not hold a grudge, okay? After all, she's still young.
Young? She'll be 24 in a month.
Sophia's smile disappeared, and she frowned slightly. He actually remembered Emily's birthday. He had never remembered her birthday.
James.
James didn't notice the change in her expression. He picked up another pen and crossed out Emily's name from the list.
I need to go out. We'll talk when I get back.
Sophia watched him leave without looking back, cold and resolute. Mental Health Clinic Examination Center.
Miss Emily, your cancer cells are spreading. I recommend immediate hospitalization for treatment.
If I don't get treatment, how much time do I have left?
Why not get treatment?
Emily's lips pressed together. There were two reasons she was giving up treatment. First, she didn't want James to know about her illness and burden him emotionally. Second, once she started treatment, it would become known that she was pregnant. She wasn't sure how James would react, but she knew Sophia wouldn't let her keep the baby.
It's hard to say. It could be a few months or a few years.
I understand. Thank you.
Emily stood up to leave. Dr. Taylor watched her thin figure and shook his head helplessly. A black Maybach turned the corner at the traffic light and slowly stopped at the entrance of the mental health clinic. After driving around for a long time, he still ended up here. James rolled down the window and lit a cigarette. He clearly wanted to go in and see her, but he just couldn't muster the courage. Maybe he just needed a reason to meet. After finishing his cigarette, he finally got out of the car.
Emily, someone is here to see you.
Who?
The person said their last name is Liu.
Emily's heart started pounding. She didn't expect he would still remember her. James followed Nurse Emily to the backyard and saw that familiar figure from a distance. However, her appearance seemed a bit strange. The woman was wearing a lavish ball gown, her hair disheveled over her shoulders, and her thin face was covered in colorful paint. She was sitting under a sycamore tree, making bird-flying gestures with her hands in the sunlight filtering through the leaves.
Is this how you take care of your patients?
Nurse Emily stood trembling. Miss Emily sits here for hours every day. We've tried to persuade her, but we can't stop her.
James. She spoke suddenly, revealing her beautiful teeth. This one word made James's heart flutter.
However, her next sentence plunged him into an icy abyss.
Once I learn to fly, I can come find you.
James had ordered that Emily not be allowed to step out of the facility. He thought they would never meet again, but unexpectedly, he was the one who came to see her. He believed he only felt disgust towards her, never considering that after she left, a complex mix of emotions would grow into longing. Now, he had to admit, he did have feelings for her.
That earlier, James had slipped out unintentionally. She didn't want him to know she still loved him. So when he approached, she clearly repeated, "Michael, once I learn to fly, I'll come find you."
James's steps halted abruptly. He narrowed his eyes, his cold gaze locking onto her disheveled face, a sense of ridicule rising in his heart.
To hell with feelings. This woman is nothing but a complete flirt. He clenched his fists, his heart as calm as still water. I came to tell you that Sophia and I are getting married next month. You better behave yourself and stay here. If you cause any trouble, I won't forgive you.
Emily's dark pupils dimmed, but she still smiled. Fly, fly. Watching James's departing figure, Emily lowered her hand to her abdomen. Baby, remember him? He's your father.
Miss Emily, you're bleeding again. She stepped forward to support her.
Emily raised her hand and wiped it, her pale fingers stained with red. Fortunately, she had painted her face with red makeup. A month passed in the blink of an eye, and what had to be faced still had to be faced. James and Sophia's grand wedding was reported by all the media even before it began. Emily found the wedding photos on the screen particularly glaring. The wedding dress Sophia wore was identical to the one Emily had worn when she got married, even the location, scenery, and makeup were the same. The difference was that Sophia's wedding was widely publicized, while Emily's had been hidden away by James. The night before the wedding, Emily's hospital room received a special visitor.
Although James disagrees, I still want to invite you to be my bridesmaid, she said, scrutinizing the woman before her. Emily's condition seemed worse than she had imagined.
Emily was still wearing that gaudy puffy dress, perfectly hiding her protruding belly. The cold lighting made her face look even paler.
Facing Sophia, she didn't want to pretend to be crazy. "Aren't you afraid I'll ruin your wedding?"
Afraid. But I know you won't dare. She raised her chin.
Oh. She sneered, rejecting her. "Then I'm not interested. Find someone else."
You don't have the right to refuse. Her smile turned sinister. After a few seconds, she changed to a lighter tone. Want to know a secret? A year ago, that car accident, I arranged it myself.
"What did you say?" Her face froze, looking at her in disbelief.
Do you know why James hates you so much? A year ago, I accidentally got pregnant. The baby wasn't James's. Afraid he would find out, I used your ID to get a procedure and had a repair surgery. The surgery and recovery took a long time. If I stayed by James's side, he would have suspected something. So, I had myself hit into a vegetative state and framed you. I just didn't expect you two to get married. She gritted her teeth in hatred. The thought of James being labeled as Emily's ex-husband made her feel sick.
Emily suddenly understood why James had always doubted her innocence, why he believed her first time was fake, calling her names. It was all Sophia's doing.
But what does it matter if you're married? You're destined to live in my shadow. Her words were like poison needles, stabbing into Emily's heart.
Malie clenched her hands tightly.
In the past, she would have fought Sophia with her fists, but now she was expecting a child.
"Sister, don't you mind? James and I have been together for a whole year. You might not know, but during this year, he wanted me so much that my body couldn't take it, and I ended up in the hospital several times."
God knows how much effort it took to say those seemingly light words.
Ophia's face changed drastically, immediately denying it.
Impossible. James wouldn't betray me. He wouldn't touch you.
"We even have a child. You say it's impossible? If you don't believe me, go to the hospital and check. There should still be records of my terminated pregnancy."
Sophia never imagined that James would sleep with Emily and even have a child. All this time, no one had told her, and James had kept it a tight secret.
Emily, I didn't want to do this, but you forced me. Her sudden harsh words made Emily frown in confusion.
Before she could react, the glass on the table fell to the ground with a crash, shattering into pieces.
Ophia bent down, picked up the largest shard, and a sinister glint flashed in her eyes.
What are you doing? She stood up, thinking Sophia would do something extreme to her. She remained vigilant but didn't expect Sophia to lift her hand and cut her own neck with the glass shard.
The sight of blood spurting from the wound reminded her of a few months ago when James had left a 6-centimeter scar under her ear in a similarly ruthless manner. The long-healed wound seemed to ache again.
Sophia, are you crazy? She rushed over to stop her, but Sophia seized the opportunity to grab her hand and force the blood-stained shard into her palm.
Yes, I'm crazy!
Dr. Smith and Nurse Emily rushed in at the sound, and as they opened the door, Sophia collapsed to the ground, crying and begging for help.
Emily is trying to kill me. Please save me.
Emily stood there holding the glass shard, stunned for several seconds before weakly explaining.
I didn't.
Notify Mr. James, quickly. With his command, several people hurriedly carried Sophia out.
James was in the middle of a 1,000-person video conference when he received the call from the psychiatric hospital. His face changed instantly. When he realized it was Sophia who was in trouble, not Emily, he inexplicably felt relieved.
He rushed to the city hospital as fast as he could. Seeing Michael come out of the emergency room, James's eyes darkened.
If anything happens to Sophia, I won't let you off.
Don't worry, she won't die. The wound perfectly avoided the carotid artery.
You're disappointed.
Disappointed? Don't get it twisted. I hope more than anyone that you two last forever.
You think this gives you a chance to be with Emily? I'm telling you, dream on.
What right do you have to say that? Don't forget how you forced her to sign the divorce papers.
Emily would never forget that day. The man she loved most broke her hand and nearly severed her carotid artery. He wouldn't allow Dr. Smith to treat her wounds, watching as her blood slowly drained away. She begged him through her tears.
Please, James, it hurts so much. Help me.
Don't want to suffer? Then sign this divorce agreement.
At first, she refused. She didn't want a divorce, she loved him. Even if he didn't love her, she was content just to have the title of Mrs. James.
James, I love you. Please, don't do this.
Divorce or become a widow.
He wanted her gone, and she never doubted his resolve. For James, taking a life was all too easy.
Fine, I'll sign.
She couldn't remember how she managed to write her name, Emily, on that agreement with trembling hands. She only remembered the tears mixed with blood that stained the corner of the paper, a heart-wrenching sight. The divorce agreement was signed, and Sophia successfully married James. But Emily and Michael disappeared without a trace.